Chapter 44. The shrill gong of the Addams bell reverberated through the mansion's ancient halls, signaling the early hours of Christmas morning. The tone echoed through the estate like a haunting reminder that time marched on, even in a family that reveled in the eternal night. The bell's deep reverberations faded into a chorus of noise, children's laughter, the rustle of wrapping paper, and the faint hum of the mansion coming to life for the occasion. The chaos began immediately. Down the halls and through the grand doors, the children of the Addams family burst into the drawing room, their excitement palpable. They were drawn not by the usual delight of Christmas cheer but by a much darker curiosity. There, by the massive fireplace, sat the remains of Uncle Knick-Knack, his skeletal form draped in a worn holiday sweater. His presence was as much a part of the Christmas tradition as the cursed decorations and the centuries-old family rituals. Beside him, the Christmas tree, twisted, blackened, and slightly withered, stood as a grim symbol of the Addams family's holiday spirit. Yet, to the children, it was a treasure trove of surprises. Eager hands scrambled beneath the gnarled boughs to claim their gifts. The air was filled with the sound of wrapping paper tearing, ribbon snapping, and the delighted squeals of the younger Addams. Tyler and Wednesday, however, arrived fashionably late. Unlike the children, who eagerly tore into their gifts, they had to dress properly. Tyler, dressed in a sharply tailored suit, walked beside Wednesday, whose dark, haunting beauty was only enhanced by the black dress and tight corset she wore. Her steps were purposeful, as always, though she seemed to move with a hint of impatience. Her eyes flickered toward the ruckus, clearly unimpressed. Tyler handed her a small black box, his smile, the Hyde's smile, infuriatingly mischievous. "Open it," the Hyde's voice purred from Tyler's lips, his eyes glinting with a mischievous gleam. He seemed to take great delight in the mystery, anticipating the reaction. Without hesitation, Wednesday took the box, her sharp fingers pulling off the lid. The moment her hand brushed the contents, she froze, then, before anyone could react, she threw the box across the room. It slammed against the floor, its contents spilling out with a horrifying thud. Everyone's eyes fell upon the item that now lay before them, a grotesque, pastel monstrosity. A baby doll with blonde hair, blue eyes, and a garish pink shirt. Its plastic face was eerily serene, eyes glazed over in the most unsettling way, its tiny body dressed in a frilly skirt that made it all the more disturbing. A collective gasp filled the room, followed by an eerie silence as everyone processed the sight. Wednesday, her face as impassive as ever, glanced up at Tyler. "No, at the Hyde. Do you like it, cockroach?" he asked flatly, her voice dripping with dry amusement as she glanced from the doll to the Hyde, the twisted grin still on his face. "That is truly disturbing," Gomez commented, his voice strained, his usual charm faltering as he stared down at the doll with an expression of repulsion. The other Addams, unable to hide their shock, all nodded in agreement. Morticia raised an elegant hand to her forehead, as though shielding her eyes from the sight. "Really, Tyler," she said in a measured tone, "this is Christmas." Adele snorted from where she stood near the tree, her sharp eyes glinting with amusement. "I can't even." "What is it with you and dolls?" she asked, voice dripping with disbelief. Uncle Greg stepped forward, looking as if he were trying to come up with something appropriate to say, but all he managed was a long sigh. "I thought we were past the creepy gift phase." "I should have known better," he muttered. Uncle Fester, never one to shy away from the unusual, simply observed with mild interest, "Well, at least it doesn't cry." Grandmama, who had been enjoying a mug of something suspiciously toxic, didn't even glance at the doll. "No one's giving me a gift this year, I see," she muttered bitterly. "I might as well have one of those myself." Her eyes narrowed. "With a bit more spice." Judah raised an eyebrow, watching the chaos unfold. "Man, I thought I was messed up." He shook his head in amusement. "Guess I've got some competition." Calpurnia, who had been standing nearby, cocked her head at the doll, then gave Tyler a sidelong glance. Her lips twitched, though it wasn't quite a smile. "You know," she said in a voice too dry to be sympathetic, "you could have at least gotten something that didn't make everyone think you've got a twisted collection of human-sized dolls somewhere." Leah, who had been standing near the edge of the room, was utterly taken aback. The sight of the doll, of its pink, blue, and blonde combination, stunned her into a moment of silence. She'd thought she had seen it all with the Addams family, but this was something else entirely. Her expression was a mix of horror and fascination as she made a mental note: never wear pastel colors in this family. The Hyde, however, was beaming with pride, his smugness radiating from Tyler's body as if he had just pulled off the most clever prank in the world. He reveled in the uncomfortable silence, savoring the reactions, watching the family members squirm. Perfect, he whispered to himself, a satisfied grin curling at the corners of his lips. Wednesday, despite the initial shock, seemed unfazed. Her expression was the same as always, impassive, calculating. She was already done with the doll, her thoughts somewhere else entirely. As she turned her gaze back to Tyler, she gave him one more, subtle look. The game, it seemed, had only just begun. As the festive chaos of Christmas Day began to wind down, the Addams family found themselves gathering in the study for a much more somber affair. The sounds of children's laughter and footsteps faded as the adults settled into the grand room, the fire crackling quietly in the hearth. The air was thick with unspoken tension, as each member took their seat, their expressions serious. At the head of the room sat Gomez, his face darkened with concern, though his natural charm never fully faded. Beside him, Morticia, ever poised, watched the others carefully, her eyes sharp. Calpurnia sat across from them, her face stoic, her posture immaculate as always. She had endured their judgment in silence, her eyes flickering occasionally to the door, where the sounds of the children playing could still be heard faintly in the distance. It was Endora Addams who spoke first, her voice cutting through the silence with the authority only she could command. "It appears we have another Aunt Debbie on our hands." Her words sent a ripple of discomfort through the room, the family members exchanging glances. Adele, standing near the corner, shifted uneasily, though she kept her expression neutral. She had witnessed many discussions in this room, but the sting of Endora's words was unmistakable. "Debbie," Calpurnia muttered under her breath, her lips pressing into a thin line. The name was like a curse, and she knew exactly where this conversation was headed. It was, after all, what they had all been expecting. Endora continued, her gaze unwavering. "Much like Morgan, your first husband charmed his way into the family with promises of wealth and status, only to leave behind a trail of broken hearts and empty pockets. Uncle Fester, especially, suffered for his blind trust in her. She swindled him for everything he had, and then vanished without a trace." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in before adding with venom, "I had hoped you were smarter, Calpurnia." "I'm not the same as her," Calpurnia countered sharply, her voice cold, though the bitterness was evident beneath her calm exterior. "You know that. I don't play those games." "Clearly," Endora replied, her tone biting. "But you did let him into our family. And now, what's left of him?" She leaned forward, her sharp eyes never leaving Calpurnia. "Another fool who thought he could take advantage of the Addams name?" The tension in the room thickened as silence enveloped them. Calpurnia was no longer the young, hopeful Addams she had once been. Her failed marriage had hardened her, and she had no intention of letting the family pass judgment without first defending herself. "I did what I had to do," Calpurnia said, her voice low, but her eyes flaring with a dangerous glint. "I made sure he couldn't hurt me or anyone else. I won't apologize for what happened." "Well," said Uncle Greg, his usual casual demeanor nowhere to be found, "we can't say we're entirely surprised. The man was a nothing before he met you." Gomez, though still disheartened by the events, added in a quieter, more measured tone, "What troubles me most is that you allowed someone so easily deceivable into our fold. That's the true disappointment, Calpurnia. You should have known better." His disappointment was evident, and the weight of his words struck harder than any rebuke. The conversation had become a whirlwind of voices, each criticizing or defending Calpurnia's actions, but it was clear the family wasn't truly disturbed by the fact that she had murdered her ex-husband. No, the greater sin was her gullibility, and the fact that she had exposed the family to such a swindler. Leah and Tyler, who were both seated near the back of the room, exchanged an uneasy glance. They hadn't been invited to this discussion by accident, they were, in a sense, being shown the consequences of crossing the family. Leah's eyes flitted nervously between the gathered adults, her thoughts focused on what had just been revealed. Her mind was still processing the magnitude of the family's unwavering loyalty to one another, and now, it seemed clearer than ever why the Addams family had been so strongly opposed to her impulsive decision to marry Judah without seeking their approval. She now understood their protective nature. Had she and Judah gone ahead with their wedding without taking the family's concerns into account, the consequences would have been dire. Tyler, however, was not as unsettled by the discussion of Calpurnia's failed marriage, though his mind lingered on something else entirely. His eyes shifted toward Wednesday, who had been silent throughout the meeting. Her expression remained unreadable, the calmness that enveloped her always a veil over her true thoughts. Tyler couldn't help but wonder what she was thinking as the conversation unfolded. Was she troubled by the family's harsh judgment of Calpurnia's decisions, or was she just biding her time, waiting for the right moment to speak? Leah's eyes, however, kept darting to Judah, who had kept his head down, his usual cocky demeanor absent. There was a subtle tension between them, the knowledge that the family was watching, scrutinizing every action they took. Leah could almost feel the weight of their gaze on her, and she was left with the quiet realization that their decision to postpone their wedding wasn't just a wise move, it was a necessary one if they wanted to remain in the good graces of the Addams family. As the discussion continued around them, the two younger members of the family stayed silent, each processing the gravity of the situation in their own way. Tyler's thoughts flickered back to Wednesday, but he knew better than to ask her what was on her mind. She would tell him when she was ready, or not at all. For now, it seemed, there was a new rule to be learned: respect the family, or risk the consequences. And as Leah absorbed the weight of that lesson, she couldn't shake the feeling that the Addams family was watching them, always waiting for the slightest misstep. Their bloodline ran deep, and loyalty to the family came above all else. It wasn't a lesson she was eager to test. Tyler leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the polished wood of the long dining table, but his mind was elsewhere. Hyde's voice slithered into his thoughts, unbothered as always, but Tyler could feel the undercurrent of understanding beneath the teasing. "Why are you so worried, Tyler? It's not like you're planning on breaking Wednesday's black heart and robbing this family blind," Hyde mused. Tyler exhaled slowly, his fingers tapping against his knee. "You don't find it unsettling how easily they can just kill someone?" he asked, though deep down, he already knew the answer. It wasn't about cruelty, it was about justice. The Addams family didn't strike without reason, but if you wronged them, there were no second chances. That man, Calpurnia's ex, had made the mistake of thinking he could betray an Addams and walk away unscathed. Tyler pitied Calpurnia for falling for such a scoundrel. "Lucky for us, we actually love Wednesday," Hyde said, his tone dripping with amusement. "And unlike Aunt Debbie and Morgan, who chose greed over common sense, we have enough brain cells to choose self-preservation." Tyler smirked despite himself, knowing exactly what Hyde meant. The Addams family didn't take betrayal lightly, and if it weren't for Wednesday, neither of them would be here. They'd be locked away in some mental asylum, sedated and forgotten. But Wednesday had fought for him, claimed him as hers, and in return, the entire family had welcomed him, not just tolerated him, but truly accepted him. Even Morticia, with her unerring ability to see through people's souls, had seen something worth keeping in him. "It's not just about survival, though," Tyler admitted, his voice softer now. "I belong here." Hyde was silent for a beat, as if considering his words. Then, with rare sincerity, he murmured, "Yeah. We do." Tyler knew Hyde wasn't just humoring him. The monster inside him, wild, vicious, untamed, had never belonged anywhere. It had been a curse, something to be feared, controlled, locked away. But here, in the Addams family, even his darkness had a place. They didn't try to cage him. They didn't flinch at what he was. If anything, they embraced it. "So, what's the plan, Ty? You gonna sit here overthinking, or are we gonna enjoy this little dysfunctional paradise?" Hyde asked. Tyler glanced up, his gaze landing on Wednesday. She hadn't spoken much during the discussion, but he could see it in her eyes: calculation, patience, and that quiet intensity that always made his chest tighten. She was always thinking 3 steps ahead, waiting for the perfect moment to act. He smiled slightly. "I think we're exactly where we need to be." And for the first time in his life, Tyler felt at peace. Snow fell in thick, lazy flakes outside the glass walls of the Addams family greenhouse, casting a soft white glow against the dark sky. Inside, however, the atmosphere was anything but serene. A dense humidity clung to the air, thick with the scent of damp earth and something vaguely metallic. Twisting vines slithered across the walls, their thorned edges curling like fingers eager to grasp whatever dared come too close. Cleopatra, the carnivorous plant, loomed in the corner, its massive petals pulsing as if breathing. From the fish tank, the occasional splash of piranhas echoed against the stone floor, while Kitty, the family's lion, stretched lazily at Wednesday's feet, purring deep enough to make the wooden chairs beneath them tremble. Tyler leaned back, his hands laced behind his head, as the old movie projector hummed to life. The flickering image of Bambi illuminated the eerie greenhouse, its innocent charm standing in stark contrast to the surrounding environment. "Since you found your Christmas gift so terrifying," Tyler began, his lips curling into a smirk, "how about we watch a scary movie?" Wednesday's dark eyes flicked toward him, unimpressed. "Is that your idea, or the monsters?" Tyler placed a hand over his chest in mock offense. "No, it's mine." Hyde's voice slithered into his thoughts, clearly amused. "I don't know, Ty, I might have suggested something a little bloodier." "You're getting soft." Wednesday watched him for a moment before turning back to the screen. "First, that hideous doll, and now this. You really know what disturbs me." Tyler grinned, pleased. "That's the idea." Though she would never say it aloud, Wednesday found herself appreciating the sentiment. It was rare for someone to understand what truly unnerved her, let alone use it as a way to connect. Tyler wasn't just indulging her morbid tastes, he was embracing them. The movie played on, the nostalgic sound of woodland creatures filling the space. "Bambi's mother is about to die." Hyde's voice practically vibrated with anticipation. "Now this is where the fun starts." Tyler rolled his eyes. "You're terrible." "And you're talking to yourself again," Wednesday noted, sipping what appeared to be a steaming cup of black coffee. "Technically, I'm talking to him," Tyler corrected, tapping his temple. Kitty let out a low, rumbling growl, shifting closer to Wednesday, who absent-mindedly scratched the lion's ears. Cleopatra, sensing movement, curled one of its vine-like tendrils toward the flickering light of the projector, as if intrigued by the dancing shadows. Just as the moment settled into something almost peaceful. "You two are watching a movie without us?" The voice shattered the silence, and Tyler barely had time to react before Gomez, Morticia, Pugsley, and the rest of the Addams clan filed into the greenhouse. Adele swept in with an exaggerated gasp, dramatically clutching her chest. "Bambi? Oh, how delightfully grim." "Excellent choice," Morticia purred, taking a seat with effortless grace. "Such a tragic coming-of-age tale." "I brought popcorn," Gomez announced, handing a suspiciously blackened batch to Pugsley. Wednesday's eye twitched. This was supposed to be a private screening. "Family is never private, darling," Morticia reminded her. Tyler bit back a laugh as Wednesday exhaled sharply, clearly resigned to her fate. Hyde cackled in his head. "This is priceless." As the movie continued, the entire Addams family lounged amongst the deadly plants and prowling creatures, delighting in the sorrowful tale on the screen. Tyler glanced at Wednesday, who, despite her irritation, looked ever so slightly content. Hyde sighed, feigning disappointment. "Fine. I guess this isn't the worst way to spend Christmas." Tyler smirked. "Yeah. Not the worst at all." Tyler and Wednesday stepped into her room, the door clicking shut behind them. The weight of the night, the interruptions, the laughter of her family, felt distant now. All that remained was the soft glow of the moon outside, casting shadows across the room and lighting up the edges of the dark, Gothic furniture. The moment the door closed, Tyler's eyes locked onto Wednesday's, and without a word, he stepped toward her. His heart raced as he crossed the space between them, the world outside disappearing. Her dark eyes met his, and she gave him a small, knowing smile, though there was an intensity in her gaze that sent a shiver down his spine. He didn't wait for an invitation. His hand reached up, cupping her face, his thumb brushing over her cheekbone. She tilted her head slightly, and without hesitation, their lips met in a soft, lingering kiss. It was a kiss that spoke of everything they had been through, of trust, of love, of unspoken understanding. But as the seconds passed, the kiss deepened, and the intensity between them grew. Tyler's hand slid to the back of her neck, pulling her closer as their lips parted slightly, the kiss turning more urgent. Wednesday's hands moved to his chest, the slight pressure of her fingertips sending a pulse of heat through him. Their bodies aligned instinctively, pressing closer, as if the space between them had never existed. Her breath was warm against his skin, her lips moving with a fierce desire that matched his own. He could feel the tension, the pull between them, drawing them together in a way that felt almost inevitable. She tugged at his shirt, her fingers brushing against the fabric as she sought to pull him even closer. The kiss grew more frantic, a burning hunger replacing the tenderness of the first kiss, as if the world outside no longer mattered. They were lost in each other, tangled in a passion that was as deep and dark as the night itself. Tyler's mind swirled with 1,000 thoughts, but all that registered in that moment was the feeling of Wednesday in his arms. The way her hands moved to his hair, gripping him as if she never wanted to let go. The way her body responded to his touch, her skin warm and soft beneath his fingertips. The kiss broke for a breath, both of them gasping, eyes locking with that same intensity. "I've never wanted anything more," Tyler whispered, his voice low and rough. Wednesday's lips curled into a smile that was all mystery and darkness. "Neither have I," she murmured before pulling him back into the kiss. Time seemed to stretch, the world outside slipping away as they moved together in a rhythm that felt as old as the house itself. There was no need for words, no room for hesitation. Only the quiet, steady beating of their hearts. Finally, when they pulled away, both of them breathless, they stood still for a moment, absorbing the weight of what had just passed between them. Tyler's forehead rested against hers as they shared slow, steady breaths. "Shall we?" he whispered, his hand brushing a strand of her hair behind her ear. With a quiet nod, Wednesday led him to the bed, her hand never leaving his as they both slipped under the covers. The room seemed even quieter now, the world outside fading into nothingness. As they lay together, Tyler's fingers gently traced over the back of her hand, the only sound in the room the soft rhythm of their breathing. He wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring, or what the world outside would throw at them, but in this moment, he felt more connected to Wednesday than ever before. With one last kiss, soft and slow, they settled in for the night, the weight of the world forgotten as they found their peace in each other's arms. Chapter 45. Tyler and the Heights' days with the Addams family in New Jersey were anything but ordinary. New Year's at the Addams estate was as festive as Christmas, but, as Tyler quickly learned, every holiday in their household was celebrated as if it were Halloween. Fireworks were replaced with sticks of dynamite, exploding with thunderous joy across the lawn. The Hyde was completely at home in these grim traditions, deadly winter sports, games with perilous twists, and experimental torture methods disguised as party activities. Tyler, meanwhile, found himself slipping back and forth between his two selves, he and the Hyde locked in their strange, uneasy companionship. While the Hyde reveled in the carnage of festivities, Tyler preferred something quieter, spending as much time as possible with Wednesday. That was, until she inevitably asked him to leave her side and give her space. In those moments, Tyler would wander through the mansion and grounds, using the time to learn more about her eccentric family. Tyler was called into the parlor, where the firelight burned low and the shadows stretched like skeletal fingers across the walls. The Addams home was never quiet, there was always the faint hum of something alive in the walls, but tonight the stillness was unnerving. On the table lay an opened envelope, the black wax seal slit cleanly with Gomez's rapier. "Tyler, mi muchacho." Gomez greeted, his eyes sparkling as he flourished the letter like a prized duel invitation. The law has remembered you, and sent us the most enchanting bedtime story. Morticia gestured gracefully to the chair opposite them. Tyler sat, his pulse quickening. Gomez cleared his throat and held the page high, his tone booming as if he were delivering Shakespeare rather than a legal document. Notice of appeal. The court requests reconsideration of the ruling in the matter of Tyler Galpin, who has since reached the age of majority. Gomez dropped the paper slightly to beam at Tyler. Ah, adulthood. The day society decides you are finally old enough to be punished properly. A beautiful milestone. Tyler shifted uneasily. Gomez continued, eyes gleaming. While culpability for the Jericho incidents was previously assigned to Ms. Laura Gates, the court requires an evaluation to determine whether Mr. Galpin poses an ongoing threat. He snapped the paper shut dramatically. Threat? Pa. They make it sound like you're a rabid dog. We much prefer the term spirited young man with a flair for carnage. Morticia's voice slid in like smoke. What the letter means, Tyler, is that they no longer consider you a child under your father's shadow. They want to know what you are, now that you belong to yourself. And they will not be satisfied with our word alone. Gomez flung the letter open again, pacing theatrically. The court recommends psychiatric evaluation at Willow Hill Institute under Dr. Fairburn, the only professional to express willingness to engage with Mr. Galpin's condition. He paused, savoring the words. Ah, Willow Hill. A veritable summer resort for the unstable. Uncle Fester adored his time there, said the straitjackets were snugger than any tuxedo. The shock therapy? Positively invigorating. Like lightning on a rainy night. Tyler's stomach twisted. The very word asylum made him think of white walls, locks, and endless eyes watching him. Morticia, sensing his unease, leaned forward slightly, her tone sharper now. You need not go, if you do not wish it. You are with us, Tyler. And we will fight for you. The Addams family has never surrendered one of its own. Gomez chuckled, lowering the paper with a softer flourish. But if you do go, mi hijo, think of the adventures. Doctors who tremble at the sound of your name, padded rooms that echo like cathedrals, clipboards wielded like swords. Why, it is practically a family tradition. No Addams has truly lived until they've been committed. The letter settled back onto the table, its words still heavy despite Gomez's cheer. Tyler stared at it, caught between dread and the strange, comforting certainty that even in the madness ahead, he would not be facing it alone. The heavy parlor doors clicked shut behind Tyler, leaving him in the dim corridor with nothing but his thoughts, and the hide. They'll lock us up, the hide hissed inside his mind, voice boiling with rage. Again. Like an animal. Like their puppet. Do you really think we'll ever walk out if we step inside that place? Tyler clenched his jaw, heading down the hallway toward the kitchen. If we don't go voluntarily, the court will force us. At least this way, we might get lighter treatment. It's better than being dragged in chains. The hide roared with bitter laughter. Word salad. That's all you're spitting. You think voluntary means freedom? Mark my words, the moment those doors close behind us, they will never let us go. Tyler shoved the kitchen doors open. He wasn't expecting company at this hour, but there at the counter, cheerfully stacking forks into a miniature lightning rod, sat Uncle Fester. Kiddo. Fester grinned, sparks crackling between his teeth as he bit down on a stray wire. Couldn't sleep? Neither could I. Thought I'd snack on the silverware. Tyler blinked, trying to shove down the hide's fury long enough to answer. Hey, Uncle Fester. Didn't know you were still here. Course I am. Morticia made me promise not to leave without saying goodbye. Besides, I've been wiring the chandelier to explode confetti. A man's work is never done. Something shifted inside Tyler, his grip on himself faltered, and suddenly the hide's presence surged forward. His eyes narrowed, his voice dropping lower as he asked, You've been to Willow Hill, haven't you? Fester's grin widened, as though this was the question he'd been waiting for all night. Oh, that? Pfft, Willow Hill was nothing. Morticia sent me there once to check up on her sister. By the time I arrived, the dear girl had already flown the coop. I stayed about a week. Top-notch electroshock therapy, zingy stuff. You've never known a good night's sleep until you've been fried like a bug on a street lamp. Tyler frowned, curiosity fighting with dread. How did you get out? Fester leaned back, tapping his bald head with pride. Mental asylums aren't fortresses, kid. They're practically open houses compared to a proper prison. I walked out the front door. Security thought I was staff. Inside, the hide snapped like a whip. You're seriously not thinking about going there, are you? You'll walk in, and that's the last anyone will see of us. Tyler muttered aloud before he could stop himself. We're going to end up there regardless. Fester's head tilted. His eyes gleamed knowingly, like he'd just spotted a mouse behind the wall. Ah. That was the hide, wasn't it? I can always tell when someone's arguing with themselves. Tyler sighed, rubbing his temple. The court sent a notice today. The judge is being asked to appeal his decision on my verdict. If he agrees, I'll be sent to Willow Hill for evaluation. His voice dropped. And I don't know if I'd ever get out. Fester let out a maniacal laugh, the sound bouncing off the tiled walls. Get out? Kid, don't be such a pessimist. Escaping asylums is practically an Addams family hobby. Tell you what, I'll give you and your hide a crash course in how it's done. First lesson, always befriend the night guards. They're usually the most gullible. The hide snarled in Tyler's mind. If they put us in there, we'll show them what real madness looks like. But Tyler's lips twitched despite himself, because Fester's laugh was contagious, and for the first time since opening that letter, the crushing dread lifted, just a little. Dawn came grudgingly to the Addams estate, its pale light dripping through the crooked windows like spilled milk. Tyler had barely slept, his mind still buzzing from the hide's seething fury and Fester's reckless laughter. Yet, when he dragged himself outside into the frosted garden, there was Uncle Fester, crouched beside a row of withered roses, chewing on a cigar stub and sketching crude diagrams in the dirt with a stick. Over here, kiddo. Fester called, waving him over with enough energy for 3 people. Time for your first asylum escape lesson. Tyler hesitated. The hide muttered darkly in the back of his skull, this is nonsense. Clown games. We'll never set foot in that place. But Tyler forced himself forward. If nothing else, he needed to feel like he had a plan. Rule number 1, Fester said, stabbing the stick into the ground for emphasis. Make yourself look insane, insane enough that no one wants to bother with you, but harmless at the same time. You don't want them strapping you down and running extra volts through your ears. You want them thinking, ah, poor fellow, he's no danger to a fly. That way, you keep your freedom to wander. Tyler frowned. And how exactly do I do that? Fester's grin split wide. Talk to yourself in public. Hold conversations with thin air. Bonus points if you argue with your left shoe. But, he jabbed a finger in Tyler's chest, never raise your voice, never bare your teeth. Smile. Giggle. Hum lullabies. Be strange, but sweet. Insane yet harmless. Harmless? The hide spat inside his head. We're not harmless. They'll smell the blood on us. They'll chain us before we blink. Tyler clenched his jaw but forced out, and that worked for you? Of course. Fester puffed proudly. By the second day, the staff was bringing me pudding cups and asking me to lead bingo night. I slipped out on the third and no one even noticed. They thought I'd simply wandered into the laundry room. Up on the balcony above, Wednesday watched, her hands folded neatly on the railing. She hadn't been told of any letter or appeal, but her family discussion in criminology class still rang in her ears. How legal guardianship changes the moment one turns 18, how courts can revisit rulings, and how psychiatric institutions often doubled as prisons. Tyler's sudden interest in escape lessons was suspicious enough. Her eyes narrowed as Fester pantomimed slipping through imaginary corridors and Tyler half listened, half battled with something raging behind his eyes. Wednesday didn't need a letter to understand that something was happening. Pieces were already falling into place. Down in the garden, Fester slapped Tyler on the back, nearly knocking the breath out of him. So, remember. Cackle, but never bite. Cry over flowers, but never over chains. Seem mad as a hatter, but soft as a marshmallow. That way, when it's time to slip out the back door, no one even thinks to chase you. Tyler muttered, "That sounds ridiculous." The hide snarled, "Pathetic." But Fester just winked. Ridiculous is the best disguise of all. And from above, Wednesday's gaze sharpened. She said nothing, but in the quiet of her mind, the truth was already beginning to bloom. Chapter 46. Tyler was strapped into the Addams family's electric chair, chains coiled around him, a straitjacket locking his arms in place. He thrashed, teeth gritted, but Uncle Fester only laughed and leaned on the switch. Best way to learn is trial by shock therapy. Fester howled, throwing the lever. Electricity surged through Tyler's body. The hide inside him growled, dredging up memories of the armored van, the shock collar, the helpless rage. Not again, the hide snarled through Tyler's lips. Stop reminding me. Tyler barked back, but Fester only cranked the voltage. Sparks flew. The door creaked, and Pugsley strolled in with wide-eyed curiosity. You guys are playing torture without me, he said. My turn. Hyde's voice rumbled, take the chair, kid. To Tyler's shock, Fester happily swapped them out. Pugsley climbed into the seat without hesitation. The switch flipped, the boy jolted, and then, he started laughing. Not screaming. Laughing. Again. Pugsley shouted between bursts of hysterical glee. Tyler slumped, muttering to the hide, he's worse than us. And then, from the doorway, a voice as sharp as ice cut through the chaos. Wednesday's eyes locked on Tyler. Electrocution has nothing to do with breaking and entering. Why aren't you learning how to pick pockets and pick locks? Everyone froze, even Fester. Tyler swallowed hard. Wednesday didn't blink. Uncle Fester finally broke the silence. The first thing they'll do in a mental asylum is schedule you for electroshock therapy. Wednesday turned her head slowly and delivered her brother a death stare. Pugsley sighed, unbuckling himself and stepping out of the chair without protest. She sat down with her usual nonchalant expression as Fester strapped her in. He threw the switch, sparks leaping across the iron restraints. When it was over, Wednesday exhaled like someone who had just finished a spa treatment. That afterburn is satisfying every time, she murmured. Tyler and the hide stared at her in disbelief. To them, she looked less like someone who had been electrocuted, and more like someone who had just enjoyed a massage. Wednesday slid a paper clip into the lock, her fingers moving with calm precision. It's all about pressure and timing, she explained, the tumblers clicking softly. You'll need this skill more than you'll ever need tolerance for electrocution. Tyler leaned closer, watching the pin turn. You're going back to Nevermore in a week? Yes, she said flatly, opening the lock as if it were nothing. Academic obligations wait for no one, not even me. The reminder hit him like a jolt. School. He'd almost forgotten it existed. Think I could still get a diploma somewhere, he muttered under his breath. Hyde's voice snarled inside his head, pathetic. No school will take you. No curriculum wants a Hyde in their classrooms. Tyler's jaw tightened. I could at least finish high school. Get a normal job. Something. Hyde hissed back, normal? You're banned from Nevermore. You think any school wants a monster like you walking their halls? Stop dreaming, normie boy. Tyler exhaled sharply, dragging a hand through his hair. He shoved the thought aside, the weight of his looming court appeal pressing harder than any fantasy of diplomas or jobs. Hyde's voice grew darker, coiling in his skull. Don't forget hides are banned at Nevermore. Tyler swallowed, forcing his gaze back on Wednesday, who was already resetting the lock with mechanical calm. She didn't notice his silence, or maybe she did and chose not to say anything. Wednesday fastened the shock collar around Tyler's neck and handed him a paper clip. "Unlock it," she instructed, her tone sharp as steel. Tyler swallowed hard, fumbling with the pin. The hide's voice rumbled low inside his head as his fingers shook. "I hate this thing, can't move, can't breathe." Unpleasant memories surged back, of the armored van, the restraints, the forced stillness when he couldn't even transform. His chest tightened, his hands trembling against the lock. Wednesday noticed, her dark eyes narrowing, but she said nothing. Not until the collar clicked open and dropped into his hands. Tyler exhaled shakily. The hide let out a guttural sigh of relief in his skull. Wednesday's gaze stayed fixed on him, unblinking. "Seems like this is the only thing that can stop you from transforming. One mistake, and they'll make sure you wear it for the rest of your life." Her words hung heavy in the air. Tyler stared at the collar in his hands, the memory of electricity still crawling across the skin of his neck. After Wednesday's lesson, Tyler wandered into the kitchen and stopped dead in his tracks. Uncle Fester was hunched over the Addams family's cookie jar, popping ladybugs into his mouth like salted peanuts. Tyler's eyes widened. "You're eating bugs?" "Ladybugs," Fester corrected, crunching loudly. "Perfect balance of sweet and tangy. Like trail mix, only the trail screams when you pick it up." Tyler shook his head. "Forget I asked. I meant, how do you make a living?" Fester grinned, crumbs of wing stuck between his teeth. "Oh, I'm a notorious bank robber. Never had Gomez's flair for business, so I took a more direct approach." Tyler frowned. "How often?" "Whenever the money runs out," Fester said cheerfully. "Which is, every few months. Sometimes sooner if I get bored." Tyler hesitated, then muttered, "So how much of the Addams family fortune comes from shady dealings?" "No one asks if you don't flaunt it," Fester said with a shrug. "Besides, everyone assumes we're sitting on generational wealth anyway." Fester chuckled darkly. "Let's just say we're diversified, stocks, bonds, offshore accounts, and the occasional train heist. Keeps the portfolio exciting." Tyler blinked. "Train heist? You're serious?" "Kid," Fester leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I've robbed banks, armored cars, the Vatican treasury, and once, by accident, a Girl Scout troop." "Don't ask." Tyler swallowed. "Do you ever get caught?" "Of course." Fester beamed. "I've served time in 6 countries, 3 kingdoms, and 1 dictatorship. Best food was in Denmark. Worst was Transylvania." He clapped Tyler on the back, nearly knocking him over. "Don't worry, your first break-in is always the hardest. After that, you'll be slipping in and out of banks, asylums, and prisons like a pro." Tyler stared at him as he caught onto the tile quickly. Fester just popped another ladybug into his mouth and winked. Chapter 46. Tyler was strapped into the Addams family's electric chair, chains coiled around him, a straitjacket locking his arms in place. He thrashed, teeth gritted, but Uncle Fester only laughed and leaned on the switch. "Best way to learn is trial by shock therapy." Fester howled, throwing the lever. Electricity surged through Tyler's body. The hide inside him growled, dredging up memories of the armored van, the shock collar, the helpless rage. "Not again," the hide snarled through Tyler's lips. "Stop reminding me." Tyler barked back, but Fester only cranked the voltage. Sparks flew. The door creaked, and Pugsley strolled in with wide-eyed curiosity. "You guys are playing torture without me," he said. "My turn." Hyde's voice rumbled, "Take the chair, kid." To Tyler's shock, Fester happily swapped them out. Pugsley climbed into the seat without hesitation. The switch flipped, the boy jolted, and then, he started laughing. Not screaming. Laughing. Again. Pugsley shouted between bursts of hysterical glee. Tyler slumped, muttering to the hide, "He's worse than us." And then, from the doorway, a voice as sharp as ice cut through the chaos. Wednesday's eyes locked on Tyler. Electrocution has nothing to do with breaking and entering. Why aren't you learning how to pick pockets and pick locks? Everyone froze, even Fester. Tyler swallowed hard. Wednesday didn't blink. Uncle Fester finally broke the silence. The first thing they'll do in a mental asylum is schedule you for electroshock therapy. Wednesday turned her head slowly and delivered her brother a death stare. Pugsley sighed, unbuckling himself and stepping out of the chair without protest. She sat down with her usual nonchalant expression as Fester strapped her in. He threw the switch, sparks leaping across the iron restraints. When it was over, Wednesday exhaled like someone who had just finished a spa treatment. That afterburn is satisfying every time, she murmured. Tyler and the Hyde stared at her in disbelief. To them, she looked less like someone who had been electrocuted, and more like someone who had just enjoyed a massage. Wednesday slid a paper clip into the lock, her fingers moving with calm precision. It's all about pressure and timing, she explained, the tumblers clicking softly. You'll need this skill more than you'll ever need tolerance for electrocution. Tyler leaned closer, watching the pin turn. You're going back to Nevermore in a week? Yes, she said flatly, opening the lock as if it were nothing. Academic obligations wait for no one, not even me. The reminder hit him like a jolt. School. He'd almost forgotten it existed. Think I could still get a diploma somewhere, he muttered under his breath. Hyde's voice snarled inside his head, pathetic. No school will take you. No curriculum wants a Hyde in their classrooms. Tyler's jaw tightened. I could at least finish high school. Get a normal job. Something. Hyde hissed back, normal? You're banned from Nevermore. You think any school wants a monster like you walking their halls? Stop dreaming, normie boy. Tyler exhaled sharply, dragging a hand through his hair. He shoved the thought aside, the weight of his looming court appeal pressing harder than any fantasy of diplomas or jobs. Hyde's voice grew darker, coiling in his skull. Don't forget Hydes are banned at Nevermore. Tyler swallowed, forcing his gaze back on Wednesday, who was already resetting the lock with mechanical calm. She didn't notice his silence, or maybe she did and chose not to say anything. Wednesday fastened the shock collar around Tyler's neck and handed him a paper clip. Unlock it, she instructed, her tone sharp as steel. Tyler swallowed hard, fumbling with the pin. The Hyde's voice rumbled low inside his head as his fingers shook. I hate this thing, can't move, can't breathe. Unpleasant memories surged back, of the armored van, the restraints, the forced stillness when he couldn't even transform. His chest tightened, his hands trembling against the lock. Wednesday noticed, her dark eyes narrowing, but she said nothing. Not until the collar clicked open and dropped into his hands. Tyler exhaled shakily. The Hyde let out a guttural sigh of relief in his skull. Wednesday's gaze stayed fixed on him, unblinking. Seems like this is the only thing that can stop you from transforming. One mistake, and they'll make sure you wear it for the rest of your life. Her words hung heavy in the air. Tyler stared at the collar in his hands, the memory of electricity still crawling across his skin of his neck. After Wednesday's lesson, Tyler wandered into the kitchen and stopped dead in his tracks. Uncle Fester was hunched over the Addams family's cookie jar, popping ladybugs into his mouth like salted peanuts. Tyler's eyes widened. You're eating bugs? Ladybugs, Fester corrected, crunching loudly. Perfect balance of sweet and tangy. Like trail mix, only the trail screams when you pick it up. Tyler shook his head. Forget I asked. I meant, how do you make a living? Fester grinned, crumbs of wing stuck between his teeth. Oh, I'm a notorious bank robber. Never had Gomez's flair for business, so I took a more direct approach. Tyler frowned. How often? Whenever the money runs out, Fester said cheerfully. Which is, every few months. Sometimes sooner if I get bored. Tyler hesitated, then muttered, so how much of the Addams family fortune comes from shady dealings? No one asks if you don't flaunt it, Fester said with a shrug. Besides, everyone assumes we're sitting on generational wealth anyway. Fester chuckled darkly. Let's just say we're diversified: stocks, bonds, offshore accounts, and the occasional train heist. Keeps the portfolio exciting. Tyler blinked. Train heist? You're serious? Kid, Fester leaned closer, lowering his voice. I've robbed banks, armored cars, the Vatican treasury, and once, by accident, a Girl Scout troop. Don't ask. Tyler swallowed. Do you ever get caught? Of course. Fester beamed. I've served time in 6 countries, 3 kingdoms, and 1 dictatorship. Best food was in Denmark. Worst was Transylvania. He clapped Tyler on the back, nearly knocking him over. Don't worry, your first break-in is always the hardest. After that, you'll be slipping in and out of banks, asylums, and prisons like a pro. Tyler stared at him as he caught onto the tile quickly. Fester just popped another ladybug into his mouth and winked.